all know each other. Thank you, Jason. In case you are not aware, we've got Jason, our IT guy, kind of running the show for us here, and we are now being recorded. I think everybody knows everybody except probably Sue. So maybe we can maybe we can start with Sue's piece of business here. Sue, you want to introduce yourself and kind of talk about what's on the agenda here?
All right. My name is Sue Albee. I have been code enforcement for almost 12 years for the City of Independence. Part of that job is animal control. And the reason I'm joining your meeting tonight is dog park. We've had some citizens or residents come to us with some problems. So for the most part, the dog park, compared to some other dog parks in other areas, we haven't had immense problems. But occasionally, dogs scuffle because, well, they're dogs. And then there's issues when the owners break up a scuffle and we get injuries. And that's the dog bites. Those are the dog bites that I get told about. Little dog scuffles, for the most part, people do not call in unless there was a severe injury to their dog because it was more than a scuffle. People and the dog's safe, and we have children that go in there trying to keep our community safer. The staff had a meeting a couple of months ago based off of some of the citizens that we talked to, and would like to propose some additional code language to the Independence Municipal Code 26-375, number 18, which is specifically for the dog park. Okay, thank you, Sean. So the wording in red obviously is what is proposed to be added. The existing rules have worked fairly well, since the dog park's been. But like I said, to keep people safer, we're having issue with some people that have aggressive dogs. I was down there. I've been trying to stop down there as time allows me and talk to people when they're in there. Some of them kind of freak out when they see code enforcement, of course. But I had a gentleman that was in there and he was telling other people, no, because my dog's aggressive. And you cannot have the dog park for yourself. If you have an aggressive dog, you need to take measures. So some additional design standards might come into play as budget and time for public works allows. And that would include on the small dog section, that is immensely long, cutting that in half and adding a gate back there. So basically, if you're in there with your dog and you see somebody coming in and the dogs don't get along, it gives an escape hatch, at the back end of the park. Because right now there's one way in, one way out, and that's it. So that's one proposal, not to mention just people trying to work with their dogs or get them adjusted, acclimated to being, joining in at the dog parks. Some of them get a little too excited, need to, kind of get a little feel for being in the fence. So it'll give another option because the small side isn't used a lot. I have never seen more than one or two very tiny dogs in it with one person. I know Dory was a dog park frequenter, so she might have more feedback on that. Anyway, so that's one of the proposals, and allowing, because that little entrance spot just isn't really enough because people can't get in or out with one entrance and exit. So with the code language, adding, unfortunately, the words aggressive dogs are not allowed. So a dangerous dog and potentially dangerous dog, basically that's after dogs have already committed aggressive acts, usually not at the park. It's usually at people's properties or when dogs are running loose through the city. And with those, any issues like that, I write up and I send to Chief Mason for review, according to the code language to see if it merits having that designation. Because once they're designated that, we do offer, if you take them to a training and you feel that problem's no longer there, come back and we can reevaluate. You know, it's not a death sentence for a dog or anything like that. But we want to keep dogs that are, the owners know they're aggressive, but they're still bringing them to the park. I mean, this gentleman, he didn't live in the city. He actually lived in Kaiser, but Kaiser Rapids has a lot of issues, and I think that's why he came here. We've had some dog owners that don't like each other, which, you know, that happens too. Part of the problem was one man was owning 7 dogs. And needless to say, when you have that, they're an established kind of pack, and that pack mentality. So they're basically overrunning the park is what several people, you know, had told us. So with that, that's where the no more than 3 dogs can be brought in by an adult handler keeper. And we still would like to keep the kids under 18 where they're only bringing in 1 dog. Because if you have a child bring in 2, 3 dogs and something happens, what are, you know, unless they're really skilled, but if you have a 13-year-old, they're most likely to get bit, and they're most likely to get bit by their own dog. It's just, I don't know why. It's just you reach into your dog's face closer. It's just more common than not. Anyway, so we're just trying to keep people safer. And the city manager felt that this would be code language, was he would like to see where the committees and commissions and boards, you know, for the city that regulate different things have a say and, you know, are looking at it and considering it as far as, because it's an area that you guys kind of govern. Part of another part further down in section 23 to do with parks is that chief, you know, as agreed, code enforcement will also be able to exclude people from the park. So that would mainly be, once again, people that are really violating in the dog park, and potentially people that keep camping where they're not supposed to in our city parks, and they've been asked to leave and told to leave, and we, you know, it'll free up some police officer patrol time, you know, if they're tied up, and we're right there dealing with it. So that's where the violations may incur exclusion from the dog park for up to 30 days. And people always have a right to appeal to the city manager on that. And this may be in lieu of, or in addition to a citation. So it just depends on what's happened. I have not issued a citation at the dog park ever. There's been people that have had their dogs
Hello.
Hello?
Yeah, right, hang on.
Let's see, did somebody else jump on? I'm not seeing anybody else. All right, sorry, Sue, go ahead.
Anyway, so like I said, we're just, all this language, it's not, I mean, it sounds kind of harsher, but unfortunately, a lot of times people, well, it doesn't say that, you know, that's like a defense that they feel that they have. And we're just trying to get it where it said. We'd also are planning to clean up the immense amount of signage down at the park. There's so many signs hanging everywhere that the signs that need to be read and are just passed over, because there's dozens of signs down there. So right on the entrance, the main entrance gate, you know, it'll have all dogs must be licensed. Every incident I've had that has involved altercations and injuries to people, one or all of the dogs that were involved were not licensed. Whether they're licensed with our city or in Kaiser or wherever. If they're, you know, if they're supposed to be licensed somewhere else, I forward that information to that appropriate agency. But I have not had a situation yet where all the dogs involved were licensed. So we want that right on the gate. Licensing your dog, it's kind of a responsibility thing. Responsible owner, generally they're more vested in their animal. Not always, I mean, but, you know, as a rule. And then having the no aggressive dogs. aggressive dogs not allowed. Those two signs right on the gate when you walk in, and then the large sign that hangs on the wooden stand off to the side. That is so outdated that we found the city codes changed back in 2013. It still has that previous code on it. So there's some issues with that. So we need to get that updated. And Jason is, got the email working, and I think he's gonna, we're gonna put a QR code. So that way, if people are having problems, whether, they need, fecal matter cleanup bags, or garbage is overflowing, or there's a problem with the water, or there's issues, some other minor issues, that can not be an emergency, but have a QR code. So it kind of goes to IndyWorks, the IndyWorks app. I'm not sure if everyone's familiar with that, but it's a tool that you can let us know what's going on. Also, we'll have the police department phone number added on there. So that way, if there's something happening, people don't have to take the time to Google, and they can just, it's right there for them.
Hey, Sue.
Yes.
There's a guy, a resident or user of the dog park, who proposed a couple, he had some thought. We obviously put the word out about this a little bit. And so he actually sent in an email requesting that, he liked the changes, I believe, but it wanted to go a little bit farther. He was proposing a 2-dog limit per person, and a ban of wolf hybrids. He believes that's sort of the main issue or the type of dog that's causing the problems. I guess, can you address that, his thoughts, or whether, whether 2 or 3?
Yes, I believe I've spoke with that gentleman more than once, and as the city manager has as well. The dogs that he felt were overrunning the park, huskies, husky, Malamute. So certain dogs have a closer genetic match to a wolf, wolf hybrids. With wolf hybrids, they are required already. They're not allowed at the park. To have a wolf hybrid license, it has to be kept, unfortunately, as a dangerous dog. So that means a wolf hybrid can never be off leash. As far as off its property, it has to be muzzled, when it's out in public, on a leash no longer than 6 feet with an adult handler. Wolf hybrids already have a bum rap, but some it's required. I mean, as they get older, age of 3, they mature and they develop a massive prey drive with the higher content. A true wolf hybrid, the fear with that is they have the strength to crush a grown man's forearm with a single bite, the bones. So so wolf hybrids are already dealt with differently through licensing.
So I guess, can you
Yeah.
repeat that? And I guess, so you're saying that wolf hybrids essentially already are not allowed in the dog park?
Because they're not allowed off leash.
Okay. So it sounds like Mr. Lewis is actually is virtually visiting this meeting. So I've asked Jason to let him access to be able to speak to this. So it looks like I see him. His name has popped up. If you want to unmute yourself, you can provide some input if you like. Sorry, you're still muted.
Oh, unmute.
There we go.
Hey, this is Mitchell Lewis. I also have Emma back here, but I actually agree with most of what Sue suggested. Regardless, like as long as there's a reasonable limitation on dogs, whether it's 2 or 3, fine. That seems fair. With regard to the wolf hybrids, though, there's actually an owner there that brings 4 wolf hybrids to the park and lets them roam freely and tries to. It's just created a lot of drama. Lots of maulings that. There we go. Sorry. Lots of maulings of dogs that have just gone unreported. People have tried to go out after his dogs have caused damage to other people's dogs. they've gone up to him to seek repayment from that, and he's acted like it never even happened and stuff. And this has happened repeatedly with the guy. And he actually introduces them as Wolf Akita hybrids. So they aren't Huskies by any stretch of the imagination. They act completely different than Huskies, but they look a lot like Huskies. But that's what the owner has actually listed them as. So I don't know how else to. I don't know. I don't really know how to respond to the comment of them being Huskies or something like that, or them just looking like wolves. But that's really the only clarification I felt like making.
So
But
Sue,
I mean, if they're already technically banned and stuff like that, then I don't see why they're there.
Can I add anything?
Also, Emma would like to add something as well.
So, no, flip it.
Sure.
Like that. There we go. That garbage on my keyboard. There we go. So I would just like to say that the difference between Huskies, I mean, this goes for like most dogs, but especially like a dog. I mean, he has multiple times said they were Akita Wolf hybrids, and I'm just using him as an example. But the reason that a two dog minimum would be like the best thing ever is because he brings 4 unfixed male dogs that are always together, that are used to each other, that have formed like a pack. Like they pack up. Like if one of the dogs gets in a fight with another dog, and then it's 4 dogs on one instead of 1 dog on one, which is hard enough for a group of 4 grown people. My dog was mauled, and it took 4 grown people
Just to pull one.
just to pull one away. So I couldn't, and I've seen it almost happen a couple times. But these dogs aren't fixed. They pack up, they scent, and they like do things that regular domestic fixed dogs don't do. And then it's just amplified by the fact that there are 4 of them.
Yeah,
And-
and it's taken like thousands of years to breed these traits out of dogs into what we have as domestic dogs, and like bringing a dog in a pen with like a wolf hybrid is like bringing a child to a kindergarten with a little chimpanzee or something. Genetically, they're that far apart, but no one in the right mind would do that because for obvious reasons. It's a great way to get your kids messed up.
Yeah.
But
they're just not very social either.
yeah,
They're just not.
well, I mean, they're social. I pet these dogs too, but results may vary. And thankfully, my dog hasn't been mauled by them. At worst, they just treat her. They just harass her nonstop, and she just sits under my feet.
Yeah.
But just after seeing so many other people be affected by this, to really no effect, nothing really gets changed. It's just the same story over and over again. That's when I decided to reach out and actually kind of hopefully inspire these conversations that you guys are having now.
I had to get my dog neutered. Like I was gonna wait till a year. I had to get him neutered at about 10 months just because I couldn't bring him to the dog park because any other unfixed male or female dogs, these dogs just like go after. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah.
Yeah, and he like specifically asks people that he hasn't seen at the dog park, like, "Oh, are you? Is your dog fixed or not fixed?" And I'm pretty sure there's a rule that you can't have unneutered
I don't think so.
dogs. I thought that was one of the rules. They had to be fixed.
I don't think so.
No.
Yeah.
But so Sue, I guess they just kind of with regard to the type of dog. So it sounds like there's a couple issues. There's one, if it's licensed or not, and then 2, if it's actually a wolf hybrid type of dog. I guess it sounds like how would that be handled? I guess is what I'm asking.
So wolf hybrids, anything that is considered a mid to high content, do not receive rabies vaccines.
You guys have rabies vaccines?
You have to have a rabies vaccine to get your dog licensed.
Okay. They have no certification for that. Right.
Are licensed differently because of that, and they are considered a dangerous dog. So there's low content, and sometimes people will say that they have a wolf hybrid and they don't. I mean, it's just. I think
So are we talking about someone that actually has wolf hybrids, or are we talking about someone that's delusional?
some people just, I think, might want to be cooler than they are, or they have a different belief, or.
So is that the circumstance that we're talking about? Like, these dogs confirmed aren't wolf hybrids, even though the owner presents them as such?
The veterinarian paperwork does not list them as such. The dogs that I know you're talking about have
Yeah,
rabies.
Okay.
So we've had high content wolf hybrids in town. There is no mistake of a wolf hybrid. Yes, Malamutes, Huskies, Akitas, some of these dogs, they look a lot wolfish, but when you have a wolf hybrid, there is no mistake.
Yeah.
So for the purposes of the commission meeting here, I think, I want the commissioners to weigh in on the proposed language here. It sounds like with this individual, there may be some, I don't know if you guys would reach out kind of separately to them about, essentially whether they can, I guess what I'm hearing is this language would potentially enable the city to exclude this person or anybody breaking these rules in whatever way for a period of time, but they're essentially not able to right now. Is that kind of the way I'm hearing it?
Yeah.
That-
It's. I mean.
Oh, well, I think that was for Sue, right?
Oh.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Sorry.
Sorry.
With the current language, it is a Class B violation, so that means a $250 to $500 ticket. And that can be per dog if there's more than, one or two.
So, what's the percentage of hybrid before they can no longer be exposed to the rabies vaccine?
I'm not a veterinarian, so that would be best posed to a veterinarian.
So, is there any documentation to support the rabies vaccine incompatibility? Or I guess if we can run on that, where are you getting your info?
This is
So,
really,
I don't mean to cut off. This is I think a useful discussion, but I think, for the purposes of this meeting, we're looking to update the city code. I think kind of more specific, we've got some language proposed, and unless, I guess, I'll leave it up to the commissioners to kind of decide, I think we could, it depends on if you all want to try to dive into the kind of a wolf hybrid issue to sort of add some language around that, or if you feel like that's already handled well enough through what Sue was talking about.
Well, I'd be fine with it if is it fine with just putting it on the sign as well? If it's, just saying no wolf hybrid specifically, or wolves or wolf hybrids, since they're already outlawed. But that's not really inferred. It's not something that someone could easily infer from the signage.
Okay, so Doria, why don't you jump in?
Sure.
Okay, as a commissioner, my time is being wasted right now. And this is, and I don't mean to be rude. I know exactly who you're talking about. I know his dogs are not wolf hybrid. I know it's a wish for him to be cool. This is a discussion that you can sit down with Sue when she is on duty, and my time as a volunteer isn't being wasted. I would like to move forward to the topic at hand on the agenda and have the commission look at the verbiage again. And I would like to, Sean, I would like to say that when I was on the committee to develop this dog park, I have not been down there in a while since my dog passed, but so I don't know what the sign says, but I was under the impression that all animals in that dog park needed to be fixed. So I could be wrong on that, but that was something that at least we had discussed at one time.
Yeah, I honestly, I haven't looked at the rules lately, so I could try to dig them up while we're talking here.
I mean, because I remember we discussed it, but
I can confirm that's not on the signage.
I can also see where that would be, not fair to everybody.
Yeah. So I'll bring the language up again here. So we can look at, oops, hang on a second here. There we go, that's what I'm looking for. All right, so I got the language up. So I guess how's the commission's feelings about the language?
Well, I was curious about the, I don't know if we want to address it or not, but I have noticed that regardless of breed, whether a dog's spayed or neutered, does make a difference for the behavior of the dog. And that might be something we would like to address. I'm not sure.
Okay, let me, I don't, I'm trying to think of where I've got, let me see if I can pull up the dog park rules real quick here. I guess go ahead and feel free to discuss the existing language while I try to dig up the dog park rules.
So this is Kate. I have a couple things I just want to add to. So I take Winston down to the dog park, occasionally, and I think we're all familiar with the person, with the pack of dogs. I think it's divisive, right? There's people that think it's great, and there's the people that obviously don't think it's helpful. I personally have never had a problem with the dogs. I have found that he is often there with other people, does try to, he's very watchful, right? So it's not like he's taking 7 dogs down there and just kind of standing by the side of the fence. But regardless, I understand people's concerns with having that number of dogs and, how some of the dogs are more aggressive. I know he has a perspective on this as well. He gets frustrated with people bringing their dogs to the dog park that are in heat. And he has voiced concerns of people being responsible dog owners, on both sides. So I think that's where I don't want this meeting to get into the weeds with, is kind of a back and forth. Well, this person is a responsible or not responsible dog owner, because it can be a little bit subjective, I think, in people's minds. And that brings me to the added language of aggressive dogs are not allowed. So I think on the surface that makes sense. And I would hope that most dog owners, and I've seen this, right? Sometimes people's dogs are having a bad day. They're cranky. They snap at another dog. Usually one of those people just says, hey, it's not a good day for me to be here. And they take their dog and they leave. So I think that term aggressive, it just depends on, right? That term is thrown around loosely sometimes, like, hey, your dog is being aggressive. And they're like, no, it's not. They're just meeting each other. It's fine. So I don't know if we can define that a little bit better, or put some parameters maybe around what that looks like, or having a definition to that. In terms of item J, no more than 3 dogs brought in by an adult handler keeper. I could see where, again, this person has brought down multiple dogs, but isn't always alone with them. So if that is still fine, if it's more of like an adult to dog ratio, I don't know how we would maybe want to term that, in terms of getting around that. I also think sometimes, if people are, rarely have I seen this, but maybe if they have a pet sitting business or a dog walking business, would they maybe be bringing in multiple dogs at a time to let them run? That might be something to be aware of also.
I'm at the dog park almost on a daily basis, and I have yet to see that circumstance arise.
Which circumstance are you referring to?
The dog walker service.
Right. And I'm just saying, if maybe it's, unless you're there 24/7, you're not sure if people are there earlier and I'm not trying to get into semantics or argue, but we could also be precluding something. I know there's a pet sitting adjacent as well.
I'd hate to focus, policy changes on like outlier circumstances that, can you name a circumstance where this has been the case? I can't.
And I'm agreeing with you on that. What I'm saying is, do we want to preclude that from potentially happening in the future?
I'm really focused on trying to minimize dog bites. That was the primary focus of me, reaching out and engaging the mayor and the city manager. And part of the reason why I'm saying this person specifically should be considered being banned is because no one else's dogs have accounted for more dog bites. The list is long and plentiful. And it's just like, it's not just like I'm opposed to wolves. I'm opposed to these dogs specifically biting other dogs and mauling them and scarring them. And to the point where I've even had to break up a fight at the park between this guy and another person. And it's just like, enough is enough. So it's not just like anti-breed thing. It's just kind of common sense. And at a certain point in time, it seems like we're not just working with the pathology of wolf hybrids or non-wolf hybrids. We're working against the pathology of their owner too.
I would like
so Sue, have you made contact with this owner?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
I would like to address
So I think it's important to understand here that you know, I think actually kind of like Mr. Lewis said, that it's bad practice to make policy based on outliers or specific,
Right.
very specific instances. I think that goes for, I think that goes for potential dog walkers. It also goes for making policy around a specific person. So, I think that also kind of comes into play, is if there's an issue with a specific person, I think that should be able to get dealt with separately through Sue and or the police department or whatever the correct powers that be. The purpose here is to make sure that the rules are adjusted in a way that I think is that folks think is appropriate, and also that enables whatever these types of situations or other situations to be dealt with appropriately.
Sean, I'm sorry. Can we go back to one of the points that Kate mentioned and ask Sue about the labeling of aggressive dogs? Isn't there, like, how many times they've been reported to you?
Okay.
Did these dogs actually get a label?
Is that what you're speaking of, Dory?
Yeah.
Okay. So yes, things have to be reported and documented, investigated. We don't just take, talk to victim, talk to, the involved, just witnesses, anybody and everybody, and it gets written as a police report. So if people are not reporting things, so I have no documented occurrence of Mr. Lewis speaking of. There's no documented dog park incidents on that gentleman.
And I guess that could be something that could not, excuse me, not to add to more signage, but if you have an issue, here's a number to call or an email, so that there is an avenue for people to be able to, report behaviors. If it could just be that people aren't sure where they would report that. And I think as long as there's a clear definition of what would label a dog as aggressive, if there's a number of incidents reported, et cetera. And is there, could we look to some other dog parks like the Kaiser or Monmouth and see what some of their language might say in there?
Yeah, we're working on sign language. We don't want to have a big sign, signs are expensive, made without, if there's going to be additional code or changes to codes. We want to have the proper code listed on there. Like I said, police department contact will be on there, along with whatever issues, maintenance issues for public works to know about. So all that type of stuff will be on the new.
Sue, process-wise, am I correct in thinking that the commission today is essentially offering input, and then you guys will take it, make whatever adjustments are appropriate, and then actually bring this to council for the actual adoption decision?
The way the city manager advised, told me was that he wanted this type of things to go to the commissions, boards that kind of oversee these areas, and basically have the committee, commission, the board approve the language before it's being brought to council.
Yeah.
It's basically
Move to approve.
residents, and it's getting residential, input.
Yeah.
I move to approve.
Is that and so that's entirely everything that's listed here?
Yes, I move to approve the 3-dog limit, the aggressive dog. I move to approve as proposed. The language changes.
I guess, could I just ask first, why or why not there wouldn't be language in there around kind of spayed and neutered dogs? What would be the pros and cons of having language about that?
So if you have a puppy, most veterinarians, that's a common thing that I hear. I know you can sometimes get them spayed or neutered at 6 months old, but a lot of veterinarians prefer to wait till 1 year old. So now you have getting out of the puppy stage, not getting the socialization. A 4-month-old puppy, there's rarely a veterinarian that would socialize. So putting that requirement on.
Couldn't you say dogs over a year need to be, or dogs over whatever age need to?
Well, and then there you run into the problem. So I walk it. How am I going to know that dog's spayed? I mean, if it's licensed somewhere else, people, it's not just Independence residents that come to Union Park. You know, how am I going to be able to tell? Or if it's chemically neutered, how would I tell the difference? So then there's a problem with enforcement with that. You know, we have code language for dogs at large, which means running loose, you know, terrorizing the town. But it also says a dog in heat at large. That one, but once again, there's some physical evidence of a female dog when she's in heat, but that's a really difficult. I have not ever issued a citation on that one because now you're getting into a bunch of letters after my name that I did not go to college for. I'm not a veterinarian, so it's a rarity. I mean, we were blessed with Deputy Kincaid, John Kincaid. He was the Polk County Animal Control for many years. His replacement's wonderful, but he holds PhDs and masters and all sorts of, all those fancy letters. And he actually is a professor. He teaches stuff down at OSU. So he was a different case, but that was his only job, was animal control. You know, I deal with junk and trash and dangerous buildings and other weird things other than just animals. So enforcement, keeping it where it's enforceable, you know, that would be an issue. Well, that dog's in heat. Well, how do you know? Maybe that dog just acts strange all the time. I mean, you know.
So I think, am I hearing that you guys want to explore the idea of a spay requirement, spay neuter requirement, or was that just kind of a possible just curiosity?
I would not like to do that. I believe that would be unfair to dog owners that are responsible dog owners that choose to breed responsibly. I don't see why that should be in there.
Okay.
I'm just saying, that's probably the biggest thing I've noticed in terms of interactions between dogs being a problem. Is when they're not feeling.
Well, and once again with enforcement, so I go in the dog park and I see this adorable small-sized, we'll say a miniature Aussie. There's full-size Aussie, there's mini Aussie. So the mini Aussie now looks like a puppy. You know, how am I going to know if that dog is 4 months old or 8 months old? You know, I mean, you start getting into some of that stuff too.
Well, you said you've never really issued a citation, so in a sense, it doesn't really matter. I mean, I mean, if the dog isn't causing a problem, it's not going to rise to the level of a complaint. But at least gives you something that if there is a complaint, you have something to act upon.
Right. With letter B, park users enter at their own risk. Along with C, handlers, keepers must accept liability for any damage or injury caused by that dog. So people will come to the police department because they lent their neighbor their car and that neighbor ran into something and broke the headlight. Well, they need that money. Well, it's called the civil process. So if somebody is having damages, one, they have to accept a risk because this is how that is. And if they expect to recoup, that's not going to be through the police department. That will be through the civil division, generally at Polk County. It's called, you know, take them to court. If you're having that type of stuff, getting people to just clean up their waste would be wonderful. You know, not leave the bags in the parking lot where cars then run over them. I mean, certain things like that. So people try to train their dogs, and I've known people that have taken their dogs down there like at 5 in the morning, because that way they were the only ones there and they could work with their dog a little bit. And they'll tell people, hey, my dogs aren't really used to this yet. Can I get them out or get them secured before you come in? Most people I have found do that. And if they don't, then those are generally the people I get to meet and we have this discussion, because they don't get to control the use of the dog park. It is for anybody to be able to come in and use. If your dogs are not well behaved enough yet, I encourage continued working with them, training them. At the same time, you can't off-put the rest of the world because of your dogs.
So I think
approach those.
I think that kind of comes the other part that I heard a little question about was the aggressive dogs are not allowed if there's any kind of a definition or the possibility of creating a definition for that.
Okay. Right. Most people know if their dog is got aggression issues against either people or other dogs. I mean, we just had an incident that occurred last week where that dog is not people aggressive at all. But by golly, and it's a husky. They are escape artists. They're very smart. But yeah, it injured severely another dog. This was not at the dog park. Like I said, the majority of the incidents that I have reported to me don't happen at the dog park. The few that do, it's like I said, somebody gets bit, usually by their own or the other, because who can tell when it's in the middle of a growling, tumble. But it just ends up sometimes happening. I mean, dogs are dogs. I mean,
So,
some are grumpy old men, some are goofy kids. I mean, they just all have their own personality.
so
Well, and
what-
I don't,
go ahead.
oh, I was going to say, I don't know if it would help at all, or it seems like it would be common sense, because I think by and large, most dog owners are responsible, but I don't know if adding language in there that says dog owners need to be prepared. If you feel like the conditions are unsafe, even if it's not your dog being the aggressor, be prepared to remove your dog. And I feel like people are standing their ground down there right now. It's like, hey, my dog isn't being aggressive, so I'm not the one that should leave, which I don't necessarily disagree with, but at the same time, don't contribute to an unsafe condition. And I mean, I don't know if we could address that with, like safety first, be prepared to remove your dog from an unsafe situation.
That might be just like signage, not necessarily like in the municipal code, but that might
Right.
be good. Something
Yeah.
for the signage, outside at the entrance to the park.
Yeah.
So something, an add-on where the park users enter at their own risk, add something in that area?
Yeah, you're entering at your own risk. Be prepared to, and I'm trying to think, it seems like I've seen some language similar to this in other places, but, common sense prevails and remove your dog from an unsafe situation.
Yeah, it seems like there should be, there can be like a dog park rules and then a how to safely enjoy the dog park sign.
Yeah.
That,
Yeah.
pick up your poop. If you feel like there's like an unsafe situation is happening, consider removing yourself and your dog from the dog park. Something like that.
Mm-hmm. And here's a number where you can report that.
Yeah.
Consider your safety and your dog's safety. Maybe just
Yeah.
adding the park users owner and consider your safety and your dog's safety.
Yeah, because I have to say, by and large, the dog park has a really good reputation, and I think people are. I know that people come from Salem and other places, and obviously Kaiser because in Monmouth, because it has a reputation for being a very friendly place. Although I did have one guy from Monmouth bring his dog over because his dog got really aggressive, and so. He was like, well, I just decided I'd bring it to this one to see if it was going to be any different. No.
Throughout the years, I've had incidents where, once again, dogs have some people traits, probably because they live with us, but sometimes a dog just doesn't like that one particular dog. Like the other 50 dogs in there are great, but that one dog is the one that they don't like that one. I mean, that's happened as well. So it's just an oddity. Not true with all of them, but occasionally it does happen. And some dogs, have had negative experience with a certain type of breed. So, if they had got bit on their nose by a little tiny white Chihuahua, they might not like small white dogs. Sometimes that happens too.
So what's the commission's pleasure on this? What do you want to do?
There's a motion on the floor.
Yep.
So we either need a second or I can retract. Hearing no second, I retract.
Kate, were you gonna jump in?
I was going to say, I don't mind seconding it.
Okay.
So I guess there was a motion and a second. Jasper, how you feel?
Like I said, is this kind of driven by one dog and one dog owner, or are these things you feel like need to just happen anyway?
I think that she needs to update the code and the signage at the park.
Signage, yeah, definitely the signage.
The other issues can be addressed independently. I mean, we need to have a working code.
Yes.
You know, I would also add, you know, every code, every set of rules needs to be reviewed and updated periodically. And this is probably the first time that we have done this since the dog park opened. So I think whether or not it was spurred by a single person, it's worth looking at. And I think these are, you know, kind of common sense adjustments.
Yeah, and I think they're common sense too. I think I'm not totally comfortable just saying enter at your own risk without really knowing what the risks are. And I think we do have some obligation to mitigate risk for people and, you know, try to have it be as safe a place as possible. So I think it is good to have things in there for safety.
So I guess just one more, just to make sure I'm clear. So we've got, sounds like the motion is second to move this forward. Do you want some type of a more specific definition of what an aggressive dog is, or are you kind of okay moving this forward with the recommendation that some type of definition of aggressive dog be fleshed out?
Okay, I think, in my opinion, we can on the other side of the other sign about how to safely enjoy the dog park, outline what an aggressive dog is. And in my opinion, even if the dog is having a bad day and aggressive, I don't think legally we should do anything unless that dog has been cited and labeled by the city as aggressive. Because, you know, I can go in there and feel completely uncomfortable with another person. My dog is going to react to my stress sense and what I'm going through. So my dog might not be aggressive, but might react aggressively because I'm feeling nervous and I'm not getting out in time. I honestly think that if we're going to put in an aggressive dog, which we should, an aggressive dog should only be labeled as a dog who has been labeled aggressive by the city. And the only way she can do that is for people to report incidences. She can't just say, yeah, so-and-so said down the road or sent me a note, you know, hey, I don't like this dog. I think it's aggressive. She can't just say, okay, that dog's aggressive. She has a legal formulation or whatever she has to go through in order to label that dog aggressive. So we shouldn't be labeling that dog aggressive. The city should be.
Remove the.
I guess I agree with that, but I also think that there should be some responsibility for the dog owner that if their dog is being sexually or physically aggressive towards another dog, that they're noticing it and taking action. It's not the other person's responsibility, or it's not waiting until the city designates it. But if you see your dog,
no, I totally agree with that, Jasper. I think that in Sean's question of what should be labeled an aggressive dog, I mean, obviously, if you're a responsible dog owner, you're not going to allow that to happen. But if that's happening, the victim dog or the victim person has also that responsibility to report. So
there's two sections to this. The way I see it is, one is what are the expectations we want to put out there for people using the park, and how do we, you know, want to advise them to behave. And then there's the whole other part of, you know, what's actually enforceable for compliance and citations. And, you know, those are different things. And I think it is, you know, one thing to say, this is how we expect you to behave at the dog park. And then there's also and if not, these are the potential consequences. And those don't have to totally line up.
Sue, would you be able to maybe, I mean, it sounds like that's basically what you're working on is sort of the rules sign and the expectations sign.
Right.
Would you be able to bring some draft language for that back to the commission?
Well, the rules sign would basically be what you have up on the screen.
Yeah.
The big sign. And the signage on the gate, once again, want to clear out all that eye clutter and just have your dogs must be licensed. And if aggressive dogs, you know, are, you know, if that language isn't aggressive dogs aren't allowed. Dogs with aggressive issues,
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Instead of labeling the dog, I think instead of
where it's
dog
softened,
being aggressive, then
it can be softened up where it makes sense that if you know your dog has aggression issues, think twice before entering. I mean, put it more in a user-friendly approach as far as those two. Honestly, those are the two biggest things. Like I said, I have yet to have a reported incident of a person, because dog bites to humans have to be reported to the state. Dog bites to dogs, that's kind of something between those two. And that's almost, unless that dog was running loose off its own property, that is really hard to who started what. As far as in a dog park. One dog wouldn't quit sniffing the other one, so the other one bit him. That's a dog thing, it's just sometimes a dog thing. But yeah, like I said, the aggressive dogs, continue to soften that language for user-friendly, but making sure they understand that, like the guy I was speaking to from Kaiser that knew his dog did not like other dogs. It was telling everybody that, he had the whole park to himself because he was running people off before he got there. So having something simple, but
All right, so do we want to move this forward? I guess, Jasper, how would you like to see us proceed?
well, I guess I see two parts, and I'm not sure how it's fully reflected here. But I think one is, what are the expectations for use of the dog park? What is expected of the dog owner when their dog is being aggressive, when they're, these kinds of things. And then what are the things you can actually get cited about?
Right, exactly.
And, you can do it however you want. For my brain, it'd be nice to have those things clarified or separated out, but there's, however the code needs to look is up to you.
Okay, so then I think what we can do is we can move this forward as proposed rule changes to be forwarded to the city council. And then, like I said, I think if Sue can maybe come back with her proposed signage language for both of the signs, obviously the rules one will look like the rules, and then there'll be one that's kind of a, for your enjoyment, effective enjoyment of the dog park, please follow these guidelines. and
Yeah, that makes sense, because you're going to look at the rule more than anybody else. Everyone else is going to look at the signs. So.
Yeah.
Well, if we get a new sign, people will probably pay attention, especially if we remove, 95% of the stuff that's down there. I know it was for fundraising. It was a great cause. It got the dog park built, but at the same time, right now, you walk down there, it's just clutter, and people don't pay attention to the parts they might need to pay attention to. It's wonderful knowing who.
I never liked where they were placed.
That's part of the problem. They're all, yeah.
I think the rule, is going to say all the things you can get in trouble for, but I think the sign should really be more positive about what we need to do to enjoy the dog park together. How can
I think
go to each other?
I think
Not so much what you can get in trouble for, but how can you behave appropriately so that we all can enjoy it.
Yeah, we could come up with a polite way to say most of this stuff.
Right. Yeah, less officially, yeah. But having the licensed dogs only, I do feel strongly on that one, because like I said, I have yet to have an incident that occurred at the dog park that these dogs were licensed.
Yep.
Every single time.
Okay, I think I believe we have beat this one to death. Not to use an inappropriate metaphor.
The signs for your usage, that would probably come from you guys, but the code language, the adaptions to the code for the big sign over on the wood thing, that's what I'm here for.
Okay, so
We're not beating dogs to death. Yeah.
Thank you.
I am willing to do some research and Sean, email you some proposed language for how to enjoy the park. I can look up other best practices, that have been used elsewhere.
That would be great. I would appreciate that, Dory.
Yeah.
Okay.
And Sue, don't sniff me. I will bite.
I know. Like I said, there's just, yeah, dogs are dogs. And sometimes people get a new dog and they also don't understand, you know, what that means because they're learning too. Not everybody grew up with a bunch of dogs.
All right, well, moving on to the next order of business here. And thank you, Sue. You're welcome to stick around or drop off however you feel like doing.
I'm going to go for the evening. I need to get some household chores done. Thank you so much.
Yep, thank you, Sue. All right, hopefully this one may go a little bit quicker. Karen sent out an email with, so this is the street trees issue that we talked about last time. As you recall, we've had several people kind of requesting to remove street trees, and many of the reasons require it to be brought to the tree board. And so what I was hoping to do was try to create some language to make this a more efficient, essentially like get the tree board, which is the Parks and Rec Commission, to buy off on on essentially like, hey, as long as it meets these criteria, it's okay. You don't need to bring it to us every time. But in these instances, yes, we do want to be able to consider it. You know, and of course, a lot of these, you know, there's always different reasons, you know, branches falling off, but sidewalks being the most prevalent problem. And as you'll recall, the one, you know, kind of, I think, positive that I saw from potentially replacing these street trees is that a lot of the older ones were put down without root guards, and that obviously makes the roots spread out, lift sidewalk, get under the road and cause problems. And so, you know, replacing a tree, while it does remove canopy, you know, does enable the opportunity to put in a root guard. So that's, I think, a positive. You guys asked me to kind of come back with two options. One is sort of a pretty permissive, you know, hey, as long as it does not have a root guard, and you're going to replace it from the existing street tree list, it's okay. And the other one being a little more kind of strict, I guess I would say. So I'm going to share my screen again here. Hang on a second, there we go. Because I don't know how many of you got to see this language that I sent out. There we go. All right. So this is from our municipal tree code, and this relates to the removal of trees. And essentially this says you're not allowed to remove, destroy, break, injure any trees, shrubs, or plants in a public place, i.e. the public right-of-way, the beauty strip. And then it says with the following exceptions: it's a dangerous tree and can only be made safe by removal. It's dead or dying and can't be reversed. The tree is diseased or is a potential threat to other trees, you know, by spreading infection. It's causing damage to nearby public or private facilities, which can't be corrected through normal tree maintenance, or removal of the tree is required to make room for trees growing on either side. They planted them too close. So that's kind of the way it stands right now. And under B, it essentially says the removal has to come to the tree board, and the tree board has to approve it if it meets these 5 exceptions. So it's kind of laying out when a tree can be removed, but saying it still has to go to the tree board anyways for the tree board to make the decision to remove the tree. So what I did is I used strikeouts and for stuff that would be removed, and red for things that would be added, and essentially said, if city staff have verified the circumstances listed here. So it's obviously somebody calls up and says, hey, my tree is dead or dying, I want to remove it. You know, the sidewalk is lifting, whatever the case may be. Somebody should probably go out there and actually verify that that is the case. And then I essentially said the city manager or designee, probably me, may conditionally approve removal of the tree with the requirement that it be replaced with off of the city's approved street tree list with an approved root barrier. So there's kind of 2 ways we can go about this, because the tree is causing damage to nearby public or private facilities, which cannot be corrected through normal tree maintenance. If a sidewalk is lifted more than ½ an inch, it's considered a trip hazard, according to the Americans with Disabilities Act. So that's, I think, the most common problem that we see from street trees. And obviously 1/2 an inch is not a significant amount. And unfortunately, it's not the kind of thing that can really be corrected through normal maintenance. You know, you could potentially cut the roots along the edge of the sidewalk, but the sidewalk's still going to be lifted. You might have to grind the sidewalk down, but it's kind of an imperfect solution. So I kind of have two different possibilities here. One would be to essentially just keep this essentially the same, but add in this language to essentially allow staff to approve this without taking these to the tree board. The other more permissive way is essentially to add in a number 6 here that essentially any street tree planted without an approved root barrier is okay to be removed and replaced, as long as the new tree is off the tree list with a root barrier. So I hope that was a reasonable explanation, and I'm happy to entertain questions or thoughts.
I don't know the tree politics of Independence that well, but I know in Corvallis, like the old trees if anyone tries to remove them, there's a near riot usually. And so it seems like that number 6 could, at least in Corvallis, would kind of potentially release a near riot. And I don't know what it's like in Independence, but I mean, I kind of give permission to remove almost any old tree, and I'm not sure that's necessarily what people often like the old trees.
Dory, looked like you were going to say something.
No, sorry. I wanted to go back to when reread number 6 when Jasper was talking. So I was just swiping my screen.
Okay. So yeah, and obviously I put number 6 in there thinking it was a very permissive caveat.
Well, and street trees are kind of a little different in that they're more community trees, and not just, even though the person's kind of responsible for the strip. And, lots of people walk by and drive by, and so there's kind of that community attachment to some of these trees too. So I wouldn't want that to be totally at the individual homeowner's discretion potentially.
Yeah, I guess I kind of echo that. I would hope that most people wouldn't, well, every now and then you find somebody that's just looking for a reason to cut the tree down, whether they feel like it blocks a view or something, and so they want that street tree gone. And I'm just thinking if they, saw this and said, oh, I bet I know that this tree wasn't planted with a barrier, that's going to be my excuse to get this tree, taken out, versus, all other things considered equal. If you're looking at the tree and it's healthy and it's not causing problems to the sidewalk, or branches aren't falling or hazardous, and you're like, well, this is a perfectly good tree, just because it doesn't have a root barrier doesn't necessarily preclude it from remaining a good tree.
Yeah. Yeah. And obviously if so, regardless, anything that's removed would have to be replaced. If somebody wanted for some reason to not replace it, then that would be something that would have to come to the tree board, and they'd have to make a pretty solid justification for why.
And replacing, you can't really replace a 100-year-old tree with a 3-year-old tree.
Yeah, and this is true too. I think there will
you
be.
kind of read the language. I'm kind of reading thinking, wow, that's pretty strict, which is good. And then you get to the very end and it's like, or whatever.
Yeah, there really isn't any ramification if you've cut the tree down and it's like, well, so I plant a 3-inch tree or not, there isn't really any detriment.
Mm-hmm. So I'm hearing that you don't want number 6, which is, I'm not especially surprised by that. How do you feel about this essentially turning 1 through 5, the verification and approval of 1 through 5 over to essentially a staff decision? Because if in the case of you know, so if it's lifting sidewalk or if a big branch fell off, essentially we would be bringing it to you with a staff report saying it meets these exception criteria and we recommend approval.
Yeah, especially without number 6, I'm more comfortable with that.
Yeah.
I don't know if you, because you have C that kind of says you can't do without board approval, I don't know if you need any language about like when it would go to the board or if it would go to the board. And, I'm fine with letting the city make those decisions, but if you wanted to have any language about whatever, the board always has, or the city always has the discretion of being able to go to the board if they want to, or if it's controversial, or if it meets some condition that they want it to come to the board, we still have to be.
Yep, exactly.
I concur with everything that we just discussed. I don't like number 6. Take that out of there. And yeah, let the city make that decision when the question has been asked.
Okay, perfect. I can definitely do that. Great, that does it for that particular topic. I forget how to, there's stop my share. Okay, quick notes.
I don't know if this is off topic, but I remember we reviewed the kind of the approved street trees in a past meeting.
I didn't, sorry, I didn't hear what you said.
I think we looked at and maybe approved a list of kind of the approved street trees.
Yes.
Earlier meeting. And just as I haven't come to any clearness in my brain necessarily, but I did start to think more about it afterwards about some of the food trees. I certainly understand that, cleaning up the mess of apples and rotten fruit and stuff on the streets a problem, but then also food's a good thing, and we do have hungry people, and maybe having a plan for gathering the food might be better than just banning it. So I don't know, just something to maybe consider at some point is, I haven't hardened into any position, but I kind of reevaluated whether maybe food type trees on the streets may or may not be as bad as I originally intended. I was just thinking mess, but I think when you think about people who are hungry, and it's not a bad idea to have food available.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to consider. I mean, anything you guys want to look at with that. I mean, yeah, it's like you say, the main rationale is the mess, and I mean, yeah, if we could it'd be great to have a gleaner group or something that would run around and harvest all the fruit trees. But I don't know of one in the area right now, so I don't,
Sean,
Mm-hmm.
why don't you this story? Why don't you let me set you up as a speaker with the Lions Club and see if that's not something we can do?
Sorry, you kind of broke up there. I didn't catch everything you said.
Oh. Why don't you let me set you up as a speaker with the Lions Club?
Mm-hmm.
And then see if that's something that the Central Lions Club can do.
Organizing kind of a gleaner.
To,
a gleaner
pick the
group?
fruits and do. Right. And, whatever needs. I'm just saying that that's what we do. We serve our community.
Very.
Groups are pretty impressive with, because there's also just, older people who can't harvest their trees, and there's a lot of opportunity for breeders to gather food for the food bank besides street trees.
Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah.
I had to get up and stretch.
Yeah, no worries. If the Lions are interested in taking on something like that, I mean, yeah, I'd love to have a gleaner group in the community.
Okay. Well, I can set you up as a speaker. We're just now starting to come into person, and we're doing like, you can either meet in person or go over Zoom, whatever feels safe. So let's say post-harvest time.
Yeah.
Let's see if I can get the speaker and give you time to figure out how you would like to see it go down, and then present the idea to our club and take it under advisement.
Okay. Yeah, I'll have to do a little bit of research into that. 'Cause I'm aware of those groups, and I don't have a real solid idea of how they operate. But I mean, go pick stuff.
There's a pretty active one in Corvallis,
Okay, good.
and the food bank uses it quite a bit.
Perfect. Was there anything else for the good of the order? Okay, appreciate you guys sticking with the, it was a lengthy discussion on the dog park stuff, but I think it was, it's good to get that stuff out there and get it all sorted through.
The balance, we should do cats next meeting. So.
Yeah, we'll get a cat park set up too. Totally kidding. No, don't even pretend that's serious.
A city catio, there we go. Indoor cat park.
If we want to be unique, I think we could do that. Oh man.
Put us
All
on the map.
Well, I appreciate you again. I appreciate y'all taking the time. I think we are good to go. So I will type up minutes and keep things going for the next one. Hopefully, Dory, if you can get me any ideas from other dog parks as far as user signage, as far as kind of rules of behavior, not necessarily rules of the park. And then we can maybe bring that back to another parks meeting.
Good.
Thank you all, and have a good night.
Thanks. Good to see everyone.